Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming in this morning and listening on the last day. This morning I'm going to be presenting about our experiences in the 17-18 season at Fernie Alpine Resort, how we learned from them, some tweaks to our program, and then how we moved forward through the 18-19 season. This 17-18 season was arguably one of the more difficult seasons for the avalanche risk management program, definitely in recent years and for myself. But just to set the tone for those of you guys who aren't familiar with us, is that thing giving reverb there? Oh, no. We're obviously a ski area operation. We operate in 2,500 acres. We have 85 avalanche paths, 266 start zones, and with those, that makes up 80% of our avalanche terrain, 80% of our resort being avalanche terrain. So in periods of high hazard, we kind of get boxed into a few corners. 3 out of the 5 bowls here. The cedar, the lizard, and the curry bowl all support size 4 avalanche paths. However, when the conditions are good, skiing is great. A little recap of the winter for the 17-18 season. We had 12 meters of snowfall, 1,289 mils of snow water equivalency in that. And then kind of one of the key problems was 59% of the season we experienced persistent slab and deep persistent slab concerns. And that was due to 2 significant persistent weak layers. We had a November 27 melt freeze crust that was very stout, widespread in distribution. Then we had a December 15 facet interface that was buried about 20 centimeters above that crust due to some cold periods through the December month. Fun fact, 4,200 kilos of explosives used through the season through 18 helicopter control missions, countless hand control missions. And not included in that number is 750 avalanche rounds, so it was a pretty heavy season on explosives that year. We had 1,509 observed avalanches, size 1, 5, and greater, so that's including all our artificially triggered avalanches, all of our natural occurrences. That doesn't account for any natural activity through overnight that got buried, or any natural activity that kind of happened through weather that was obscured and got buried. Benchmarking this season against any others was our high amount of incidences and notable near misses. We had 3 skier accidentals, size 2, with members of public. Thankfully, no one was severely injured. And then we had 6 other very notable near misses involving staff with events size 2 and greater. We had 3 events exceeding historical mapping and recording. And then kind of towards the end of the season, end of February, we had a senior resort management intervention to the avalanche risk management program. And apologies for the no time scale on the graph here, but you can see we had a kind of a steady December, and then second week of January there, this is when the snowpack kind of doubled. Those PW wells were overburdened. That's when things came active, and then the snowpack just climbed from there. This is H2D and H2D snow water equivalency, and then HS. Events here, this center event, this was January 9th. This was when our world got turned upside down. This was kind of the first big event for the 2 PWLs to become awake. This was a skier accidental in the Michi chutes. This was one of our historic events. No one had ever seen this feature perform in the manner that it did. Member of the public triggered this avalanche. Thankfully, no involvement there. It failed on the December facet, scrubbing down to the November crust, and it was 100 meters wide and about 180 to 100 centimeters deep. The bottom right there, that's the polar circus. Through the month of January, we had just shy of 4 meters of snowfall on top of our PWL slab. And this was the first, we kind of abandoned the Polar Peak region where we were kind of focusing on the main core of the ski area. And then first week of February, it was time to try and regain the peak. We have images of some of the patrollers standing with the bull wheel of that chairlift at their shin height. So needless to say, there was a lot of work to be done. In this, keep in mind for this example, this avalanche hadn't occurred yet, and in the weeks leading up to this event, the Alpine start zones had been performing on the PWL layer. However, this start zone had kind of been overlooked, and we decided that it was time to set the cat up the road to regain the peak. And where the red line starts there, the cat kind of got stopped by too much snow, so we committed staff, lift operators, and patrollers to shovel the road for a whole day so he could get to the saddle. He did that successfully. Kind of end of the day crew left, and the cats continued working up the ridge to gain the peak. And somewhere in that time, this avalanche occurred. It was a size 3. It initiated on a little minor sun crust and then step down onto the November crust. And then the key point here, hopefully, I don't think I made those thick enough, but that circle there, the crown was 3 meters deep. This is not really a regular performer to this nature. However, the key point here is that we had staff in the start zone there for a whole day leading up to this event. There is a little bit of uncertainty here as to whether it was just a remotely triggered avalanche or whether it was initiated just from the cat plowing snow into the start zone as he was working. And then this top right image, this is the polar chutes. This is February 24th, I want to say. We'd kind of gained control of the rest of the resort, and it was time to move up to the peak. We'd gained confidence that the PW well was okay. This was the first time that we'd opened the chutes for the season, and arguably it was a pretty glorious opening of the chutes. We had 30 centimeters of low density snow. It was bluebird, and you can see it was well received by lots of people. However, after an hour of being open, this guy happened. It was initiated up here by a member of the public. He came to a standstill. Thankfully, no one else was skiing in this start zone at the time. However, it did collect a lady on this traverse line, took her down to about here, buried her shallowly, and she was excavated quickly with no physical injuries. And that thing occurred on a mid-February facet interface that kind of got formed and buried about February 15. It was a wind slab due to some reverse loading winds that were kind of abnormal to that season. And this was also kind of the point where the resort management stepped in and said, that's it guys, no more. We'd had a lot of events, we'd had a lot of near misses, and they kind of said, that's it, no more stepping out for the season. Polar chutes can stay closed for the rest of the season, so they only lasted an hour. And then some of the other terrain that we typically move into in the springtime when snowpack allows, we just didn't even consider it. And that was just how it was going to stay regardless of improvement to conditions. So with that, at the end of the season, we were kind of left wondering what just happened, where did we go wrong, and then how do we move forward from here. Miraculously, no one got physically injured through any of these events, but we did question the mental state of the guests that were involved, and then how this season was going to affect our decision-making moving forward into the next season. Okay, so by no means are these all the contributing factors or the ultimate contributing factors. However, these are the ones that kind of kept on bubbling to the surface through discussions through the summer and then leading up into the season that we just had. We discussed the speed of the program. Over time, we think that the program had developed to a speed that was perhaps maybe too fast, maybe we were too comfortable in the terrain. For example, our center bowl, the curry bowl, historically would remain closed for a day, 2-3 days through a storm period while we worked on other core terrain and then finally gained confidence to move into the curry bowl. However, in recent years, and I'm talking like over time, like a decade or a decade and a half, in recent years, it's been quite common for the curry bowl to be, as we've gained confidence to work in it, it's quite common for the curry bowl to be open nearly every day. Most recent seasons, you could count on one hand how many days that's closed. At Fernie Alpine Resort, we're very good at providing powder to the people. That's what we do. We've got very hungry guests. And in times of high uncertainty through the PWL in January, we found it pretty difficult to sit there idle and practice the patience and deliverance that weak layer demanded. We spoke about, as a group, whether we were letting motivation bias us into getting back into the terrain. We kind of all disagreed that we were practicing patience and deliverance. However, within a week, we'd kind of walk ourselves straight back into another event. So perhaps we were motivationally biased and just less aware of it. We had extended periods of time removed from the terrain. As I said, I'm not sure if I mentioned it already, but we had 4 meters of snowfall through January piling up on top of our deep slab. So combine that with high degrees of uncertainty with sensitivity and magnitude as regards to the deep slab, we had to just remove ourselves. We had some unfortunate events happen. We had one of our main chairlifts that provides access to the terrain go down on the 11th of January for 2 weeks due to a mechanical failure, so that really slowed down our rotation through the upper mountain. So by the time came to re-enter the terrain, we were kind of re-entering a mid-season semi-unmodified snowpack, where normally at that time of the season we're just dealing with storm top-ups and short-lived instabilities. We had repeated lead up to near-miss events and accidents. When you review all of our incidences, actual events and near misses, we used the same heuristics and fell into the same traps pretty much every time. We discussed scheduling variations. We operate in two different forecast zones, and they're both managed very differently due to the nature of the terrain. And over the last few years, we've been trying to cross-pollinate the forecasting team in order to get a broad scope of experience in the two different zones to allow to help each other and also to allow for like scheduling. You know, one guy wants to take a holiday, the other guy can go over and work on that side. But it does lead questions to whether we were actually creating data gaps and knowledge gaps, not allowing the forecaster to spend enough time in his zone and learn it and own it. This is just a simple question. Was the problem beyond our experience level? We've definitely had PWL seasons with volatile slabs like this before, but there was something different about this season and it's still just an ongoing question. We were reminded of the volatility of a skier-built slab. Normally in our operation, we applaud skier compaction. However, two of the historic events, one being the Mitchie Chutes one that I spoke to earlier, and then this event here, this guy jumped a gully and blew its mapped run length by a couple of 100 meters, and it was also a piece of terrain that was open in the kind of the 3 to 4 weeks leading up to January 9th when everything woke up. So, I question whether the skier compaction contributed to the volatility of those events there. We also learned that we had to improve our recording quality significantly, improve technology in order to review our work through storm cycles and review holdouts and things like that. Some of the key points of learning, in hindsight for us, it seems that the 17-18 season, like I said, with hindsight, it seems easy to look back and highlight the improvements that we can make with our program and little places where we went wrong. However, it also highlights how difficult it was for us to acknowledge biases and acknowledge these mistakes when the freight train was already in full motion. It also highlighted for us how important it is to slow down and practice patience and deliverance when it's required. Nothing so time sensitive in our program that we don't have an extra few minutes to hours or days to take time to make more methodical decisions. If you haven't seen this guy's presentation, High Risk, Low Frequency Events in the Fire Service, Gord Graham, check it out. He delivers a really great punchline at the end. Slow down, slow down, slow down. It's super entertaining. So moving forward into the 18-19 season, again, by all means, these are not the ultimate answers to our problems, but these are some of the things that we addressed. We employed a back-to-the-basics mentality. We reminded ourselves of the key fundamentals of avalanche forecasting at Fernie Alpine Resort and how our program operates to get maximum efficiency. We asked ourselves for more validation than what was required in previous seasons, more profile work, more data collection, more testing, explosives, and ski cutting in an already heavy explosives program. Needless to say, we slowed the pace down. We took some opportunities to get some people of influence through the community by communicating the risk at some different forums. At the Elk Valley Snow Avalanche Workshop that Steve Kite spoke to yesterday, we had a presentation to members of the public outlining the complexities of our program. We also had a presentation to property owners at the ski resort, again outlining the complexities of our program and explaining to them that things might move a little bit slower. And this was all in an attempt to get a bit of buy-in from these people. So on a busy powder day, they were hopefully, instead of complaining about us in the lift line, they were like spreading the word and telling everyone, it's okay guys, they're out there doing a thing, all for our safety, we're going to get the powder eventually. And I definitely felt like it seemed to work with some key people in the community. We focused on specialization with our forecasting team. We dedicated 2 forecasters per side, so there was 2 guys working each side for the whole season, so we could just focus in on our zone, focus in on the snowpack, and get intimate with it for the season. We employed a third-party review of the program through January. Walter came and reviewed our program for 4 days, had a tour of the operation, and interviewed members of the staff from entry-level technicians through to resort management. And somewhere in there bubbled this saying, and I still don't know who produced it, but perhaps we were going through a paradigm shift. We must open it to make it safe would be the previous mindset. Moving forward to let's make it safe so we can open it if appropriate. It's a very, very subtle difference, but it seems to have a big impact with us. Another thing that I haven't got listed here, which seems very important given some of the other presentations this week, and it was triggered from last year's spring conference. We did get the Road to Mental Readiness guys to come in pre-season, and they delivered their course to the entire ski patrol department and other resort management. We placed mental health pretty high on the priority list, just in general awareness, and then also just for the forecasting team. So with that being said, we had a successful season. We grew, we prospered, we learned about ourselves. We did have a couple of minor size 1 events that in previous years would kind of not even be noted, but given the season and the way we were approaching it, we tried to take point of learning from all of them. The nature of our terrain is that it's borderline impossible to get through a season without a single size 1 involvement, whether it be staff or public. To be taken with a little bit of grain of salt with that, the season was a lot fairer to us, and I'm sure everyone would agree with that. We had short-lived, persistent weak layer instabilities, and they were very isolated. And then the rest of the season was made up of short-lived storm instabilities and then some cycles related to the warming in March. But all that being said, we did have a good season, and this is what it looks like on...
People will fall.
There you go. Fine.
I don't care, man.
Okay.
Go get that pound.
I'm gonna go all the way over.
Hell yeah, look at all the bread getting going down. That is kind of amazing.
Look at everyone get stuck. Film that.
I can't go get it.
Go get it. You guys are timbers. Look at everybody get stuck with the bottle. It's so funny.
Ben, you alluded to the mental condition of the people who were involved in the slides, and you questioned that somewhat. And was there a formality to the follow-up on any of those, and any outcomes from that?
Yeah, there was definitely a process that got followed, Dave. That's kind of like upper management dealing with the risk managers, and I believe there has been a process that kind of got followed out with those guys, and Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, if those guys are welcome to come back and question or get anything that they need from us.
And that was carried out by upper management, not so much by the other people involved?
Yeah, they went through a process immediately. They were taken down and debriefed and given the opportunity to ask questions, whatever, and then, yeah, there's been some formalities.
That was my perception of it as well.
Yeah. But, yeah, I personally don't know how they're going.